64-year-old woman manifests love after 22 years divorced. Clara kept a simple life. She liked her morning tea, her short walks, and a good book at night. The days were steady but quiet in a way that sometimes hurt. She had been divorced for 22 years. Friends said she was strong. She was, but she was also lonely. She had learned to fill her time so the ache stayed small. Still, at dinner, the extra chair reminded her of what was missing. One evening she sat on her couch and scrolled through videos on her phone. A calm voice made her stop. The woman on the screen spoke softly about a practice called scripting. She said you could write your wish as if it were true now, not someday, now. Then you breathe and let your body feel the good feeling for a minute or two. It is not pretending, the woman said. It is teaching your body a new normal. Clara almost moved on. She had tried other things years ago and felt silly, but the voice was kind, not pushy. The woman did not promise a miracle. She said small, steady steps change a life. Write one line. Feel it for 2 minutes. Then do one simple thing that fits the feeling. Clara could try that. It was gentle. It did not cost money. It asked for honesty, not noise. She looked for a notebook and found one with blank pages. Her hand shook a little as she opened it. She did not want to make a grand speech she could not believe. She wanted a sentence that felt true in her mouth. She wrote, "I am loved and loving." She paused, reading the line the way she would read a line in a book. The words felt strange and also kind. She added one more line, small and clear. "I welcome a kind, mutual love." The video said to breathe and let the body catch up. Clara set the phone face down, placed her hand over her heart, and took 3 slow breaths. On the 3rd breath, her shoulders dropped without effort. She closed her eyes and read the lines in her mind as if they were describing her own life now. She pictured a warm presence beside her as she poured tea. She felt a quiet smile rise, not because someone was there yet, but because her body knew what it would be like. For 2 minutes she stayed with the feeling. When her thoughts tried to jump ahead, where would I meet him? What if this is foolish? She came back to the simple lines in the notebook. I am loved and loving. I welcome a kind, mutual love. The words were like smooth stones she could hold. When the buzzer on her stove beeped in the kitchen, she opened her eyes and stopped on purpose. The video had said to end before the mind could ruin it. Let the good settle, then take the next step. Clara put the notebook on her nightstand. She washed her cup, set it to dry, and turned off a few lights. She did not make a plan to change her whole life that night. She only promised herself she would write the same lines in the morning and feel them for 2 minutes again. As she pulled back the covers, the apartment did not feel quite so empty. The chair across from her was still just a chair, but the ache inside it had softened. She lay down with her hand over her heart and whispered the words once more, I am loved and loving. The sentence felt small and brave. It was a start. Clara kept her promise to herself in the morning. Before she looked at her phone or made tea, she sat on the edge of her bed with the small notebook. She wrote one line in clear letters, I am loved and loving. She read it once, then placed her hand over her heart. 3 slow breaths. On the 3rd breath, her shoulders dropped a little. She closed her eyes and let the line feel true now. She did not try to picture a whole life. She only stayed with the warm feeling for 2 minutes, the way the calm voice had taught her. When the 2 minutes ended, she opened her eyes and stood up slowly so she would not spill the calm. She made tea and hummed without thinking. The apartment felt the same, but she did not. The ache had space around it. At the market that day, a woman she had seen many times said, I love your scarf, and began to talk about the weather and a recipe. It was a simple chat, friendly and easy. Clara felt shy at first, then warm. She let the talk last 1 minute longer than she would have before. On the walk home, she noticed her step felt lighter. She did not tell herself a big story. She just let the good stay. In the afternoon, a neighbor texted to ask if she needed anything from the store. It was a small message, but it landed softly. Clara wrote back, "Thank you, I'm all set," and added a smile. She put the phone down and smiled again by herself. She saw how, for years, she had rushed past moments like this because they did not fix the whole problem. Today she let them count. That evening she opened the notebook again. She wrote the same line, then added one more. "I welcome a kind mutual love." Hand on heart. 3 slow breaths. She felt what it would be like to pour 2 cups of tea and hand one to someone who cared for her and whom she cared for too. The feeling rose like a small, steady flame. When a thought tried to ask how or when, she returned to the lines. 2 minutes. Then stop on purpose. The stopping felt strong. Over the next days, tiny wins kept showing up. A friend called and stayed on the line longer than usual. Clara listened and shared a little more of herself. A man at the bus stop held the door and said, "After you," in a voice that was kind, not pushy. At book club, she made a quiet joke and the circle laughed. The laugh felt gentle, like hands catching a ball and throwing it back. She gave thanks under her breath and let her chest stay open. Some mornings, the 2 minutes felt thin and she wondered if she was doing it right. She kept them anyway. She learned to end before her mind could argue. She learned to take one next simple step from the calm, like sending a thank you text, choosing a seat near others, or asking a small question. Calm first, action next. That order held. At night she read over her lines and noticed they no longer felt strange. "I am loved and loving." The words rested in her body as if they belonged. The days were still simple, but they had more light in them. Clara did not call it magic. She called it practice. She placed the notebook on her nightstand and fell asleep with a quiet smile, ready to try again in the morning. The coffee was her idea. A friend from book club said he's nice and showed a picture. Clara said yes because she wanted to practice being open. They met at a small place on a corner. He was polite but checked his phone 3 times. When she asked about his week, he talked fast about old fights and said he wasn't sure people changed. Clara listened and tried to keep her chest soft. When she spoke, he cut in with another story about his ex. She nodded and sipped. The cup felt heavy in her hand. When the bill came, he said, "We can split," and stood up before she answered. Outside, he waved with a quick, "Good luck out there," as if they were strangers on a bus. Clara watched him go and felt a pinch under her ribs. It wasn't the money, it was the way the talk never made room for her. She walked home slow, telling herself not to make this one coffee mean everything. Still, the old thought slid in. Maybe it's too late. That night she opened her notebook. "I am loved and loving." The line looked smaller than yesterday. She placed her hand over her heart and took 3 breaths. On the second breath, the coffee scene replayed itself, his eyes on his phone, the quick goodbye. Her shoulders rose again. She finished the 2 minutes, but the feeling didn't hold. She closed the notebook and put it on the table a little harder than she meant to. The weekend came quiet. Her neighbor was out of town. Book club got moved. The phone stayed still. Clara tried to fill the time the way she used to. Laundry, a long walk, a clean counter. But the rooms felt echoey. She made tea for one and noticed the second cup was still in the cabinet. The chair across from her sat empty in a loud way. She told herself not to be dramatic. Then she felt tears press up anyway. She wiped her face and tried the practice again. Hand on heart, 3 slow breaths. "I am loved and loving." As soon as her chest softened, another thought pushed in. Loved by who? When? How long will you wait? The questions didn't sound cruel. They sounded practical. But they tightened her throat and made the minutes stretch. She ended on purpose, the way the video had taught, and still felt shaky. On Sunday, she called a friend and almost said, "Set me up with anyone." She bit her tongue and asked about the friend's garden instead. After the call, she opened her phone and scrolled through profiles she had promised herself not to rush. Everyone blurred into a list of facts. She set the phone down and picked it up again 2 minutes later, as if the right person might appear if she stared hard enough. By evening, she felt tired in a way sleep would not fix. The quiet was heavy and the coffee memory kept knocking. The practice felt thin and a little embarrassing. She told herself it shouldn't matter so much. Still, the doubt sentence drew itself across the inside of her mind. It's too late. She knew it was an old sentence, but it sounded new each time. Before bed, she stood by the window and let the room be what it was. She didn't pretend she felt strong. She didn't pretend the 2 minutes had fixed the ache. She put her hand on her heart one more time, not to perform, just to be kind to herself. The warmth there was small but real. She turned off the light with her jaw tight and decided that next week she would try harder, do more, make something happen. The thought gave her a thin kind of hope, the push kind, and she fell asleep planning, not believing. Clara made a list and filled it to the edges. Monday night, a community lecture. Tuesday, a walking group. Wednesday, a singles mixer. Thursday, a meetup for board games. Friday, coffee with someone from an app. She told herself action would keep her from thinking too much. She didn't ask if the actions felt right. The point was to be busy. At first, the motion gave a spark. She tried on 3 outfits and chose the brightest one. She put on lipstick she hadn't worn in years. She left the apartment early and walked fast. The lecture was fine. She nodded a lot and clapped at the end. She did not remember what the talk was about when she reached the bus stop. She opened a dating app and began to swipe. The swiping turned into hours. Faces became cards. She read too quickly, then read again, then forgot what she had read. She matched with a man who wrote long messages and answered each one with a longer story about himself. She kept up until she felt dizzy. She told herself not to be picky. She told herself the right person might be one more swipe away. Her thumb kept moving even after her eyes burned. The next night she went to the walking group and tried to chat with everyone. She laughed too loudly at 2 jokes and then went quiet for a long stretch. She walked home and opened the app before she took off her coat. More faces, more facts, more questions she could not answer about strangers. When she finally set the phone down, her hand shook a little from holding it so long. By midweek, the apartment looked like a suitcase had exploded. Shoes by the door, 2 dresses on the chair, a coffee cup on the counter next to a half-written note. Clara told herself the mess proved she was trying. She ate a quick bowl of soup standing up and left for the mixer. The room was bright and full. She practiced her hello and her next hello and her next. She forgot people's names as soon as they said them. A man asked where she was from. She answered and heard herself rush on, piling words so there would be no silence to reveal how tired she was. Tasks got done. She showed up everywhere she said she would. She answered messages, confirmed plans, and followed up. When she lay down at night, her body hummed like a refrigerator that never turned off. She slept lightly and woke as if she had been tapped on the shoulder. On Friday, she met the coffee date and checked off another box. He was fine. She was fine. They talked about weather and routes the bus took. When it ended, she walked home and opened the app out of habit. Her chest felt crowded like a drawer stuffed too full to close. She noticed she had skipped her morning line 3 days in a row. The notebook sat on the nightstand with its corner turned up, waiting. She told herself she would write tomorrow. Tonight she needed to keep momentum. She stayed up late answering messages that didn't need answers. The words blurred. The hope she felt wasn't soft. It was buzzy and thin. She closed her eyes and saw not a person she wanted to know, but a grid of faces she could not hold. She realized she hadn't laughed in a way that reached her stomach all week. Her eyes stung. Clara turned off the lamp and lay still. The room was quiet, but she did not feel quiet inside it. She had done everything she could think to do, the hard way, and finished the list. What she felt was scattered, drained, and a little lost, like she had been walking quickly in circles. She pulled the blanket up and let the truth sit with her. None of this felt like love. It felt like noise. Clara's week looked full on paper. Her calendar had boxes for lectures, a walk, a game night, and coffee. She checked them off one by one. She smiled when she needed to. She listened well. She came home each time and set her keys on the same dish. The apartment met her with the same quiet. She made tea for one. The chair across the table stayed empty. The ache she carried was small in the morning and larger at night. She kept writing her line most days. I am loved and loving. Some mornings it felt steady like a handrail. Other mornings it felt thin, like a thread she could snap if she pulled too hard. She still did the 2 minutes with her hand on her heart, but she noticed that right after she opened her eyes, her shoulders rose again as if they were bracing for a blow. The calm slipped out like a tide. On Tuesday, a neighbor offered to carry her groceries up the stairs. Clara's first word was no, out of habit. She heard herself, paused, and said, "Thank you, yes." He carried the bag and joked about the weight of oranges. She laughed. As soon as the door closed, she looked for something wrong with the moment. Maybe he thought she was weak. Maybe she owed him something now. The warmth that had landed lifted off again. She felt the loss as a small chill. At the lecture, a woman saved her a seat and waved her over. Clara sat, and the talk began. The woman whispered a kind comment and shared a pen when Clara's ran dry. Clara nodded and said thanks, but part of her stayed stiff, as if the kindness would cost her later. She caught herself counting the seconds to the end, just in case the person left early, and she felt foolish for enjoying the company. The bracing kept the time from touching her. She noticed the pattern at the bus stop on Thursday. A man made room for her on the bench and said, "How was your day?" She gave a short answer and a careful smile. Then she watched herself hold her body like a shield, shoulders tight, jaw set, eyes on the route map instead of his face. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of being seen and then dismissed. She stared at the map until the bus arrived. When she climbed on, her chest felt hard. That night she sat at the table and told the truth to herself. She was doing the things on the list, but she wasn't letting warmth land. Even small good moments slid off because she was already tensed for the moment after. The bracing made sense. It had kept her safe for years. It also kept love out. She wrote her lines slower. I am loved and loving. She added one more. I can let good in and keep it. Hand on heart. 3 slow breaths. During the 2 minutes, she tried something new. When the warmth came, she let her shoulders stay down. When a thought rose to check for danger, she said softly, later. For a few seconds, the calm stayed without slipping. The evening was still quiet. The extra chair was still there. But Clara felt she had found the edge of something true. It wasn't only about meeting someone. It was about letting gentle moments land when they came and not yanking them away before they could rest. She put the notebook on the nightstand and lay down. She told her body, we are safe for 1 minute, and the minute held. Clara met her downstairs neighbor in the hall by the mailboxes. He was friendly and always said something kind about the day. She mentioned she had been trying a new practice for love. He listened the way good people do without jumping in. I've done a little of that, he said after a moment. Here's what helped me: receive the feeling first. There isn't one best method. Scripting works for some. Visualization works for others. The method is just a door. Clara stood with her envelopes in hand and let the sentence settle. Receive the feeling first. No single best method. It sounded simple, and it made room for her to try again without making herself wrong. She thanked him and walked upstairs slowly, like she was carrying a small warm thing she didn't want to spill. At home, she set her mail on the table and sat on the edge of her bed. She took the notebook in her hands, read her lines once, and then closed it. Today, she would try the other door. She placed her palm over her heart and let her eyes close. 3 slow breaths. On the 3rd breath, her shoulders dropped on their own. She brought up a scene that felt kind. She did not force it into a movie. She kept it small and close. She pictured herself pouring tea and setting 2 cups down. The second cup stayed as if someone she liked and trusted had just stepped into the room. She didn't see a face. She felt a presence. Steady, warm. The kind that looks at you and actually sees you. She let her body react as if it were real now, jaw soft, breath moving low, a quiet smile that rose without being told. Her mind tried to ask who and when. She said later and returned to feeling the chair under her and the weight of her hand over her heart. For 2 minutes, she let the warmth fill the edges of her chest. She noticed how her back rested more fully against the bed frame, how her feet were warm on the rug. The scene didn't need to be perfect. It needed to be honest. When the 2 minutes ended, she opened her eyes and stopped on purpose. She stood slowly, carried the calm to the kitchen, and made 1 actual cup of tea. The apartment felt the same and kinder. She did her errands without rushing. On the bus, she touched her chest once and felt the warmth return for a second, like a pilot light catching. In the evening, she tried again, eyes closed, hand on heart. She pictured a short walk with someone beside her, not talking the whole time, just being next to each other in an easy way. The feeling rose faster this time. She let it sit for 2 minutes, then ended while it was still sweet. Over the next few days, she kept the practice short and steady, mornings and sometimes evenings. She didn't measure the sessions or judge them. She only asked, "Did I receive the feeling first?" If the answer was yes, she took 1 simple action that fit the state, sent a thank you text, chose a seat near people at book club, left her door open a moment longer to say hello to a neighbor. Clara noticed something small and important. The calm stayed with her a bit longer after each session. She could touch it in the middle of the day with 1 breath. Scripting had taught her the words. Visualization let her body learn the feeling. There was no best method. There was only the one that worked for her now, and today, this felt right. Clara kept the visualization short and steady. In the morning, she sat up, hand on heart, and let the picture rise. A warm presence beside her on a small walk. The sound of 2 cups set on a table. 2 minutes only. She opened her eyes while it still felt good and carried the calm into the day like a quiet light in her chest. Something in her softened. At the market, she didn't rush her hello. She met a neighbor's eyes, and the talk moved without strain. They traded a tip about peaches and laughed at how they always forget where the salt is. The laugh reached her stomach. It surprised her how easy that felt. At book club, she came a few minutes early and chose a seat near the middle instead of the end. When someone asked what she thought of the last chapter, she answered simply and stopped. The circle picked up her thought and tossed it around. A woman touched her arm and said, "I loved that part too." Clara let the touch land and didn't pull away inside herself. After, the host said, "We're adding a mid-month meeting. Want in?" Clara said yes and felt the answer fit. On the bus, a flyer caught her eye, a free lecture at the community hall about city gardens. She took a picture of the date and smiled at how naturally her day kept offering small doors. Later that week, a friend texted, "Come with me?" She agreed without worrying if she would say the perfect thing. They sat side by side and listened. The speaker told a story about planting 3 herbs on a windowsill and how a little care changed the feel of a home. Clara thought about her visualizations and nodded. A little care changes things. After the talk, sign-up sheets sat on a table for a neighborhood garden. Clara read the list and felt a nudge, the same gentle one from her morning practice. She wrote her name on the line for onboarding volunteers. Not to force a result, to match her calm with a step in the world. Conversations kept flowing. An old acquaintance met her on the sidewalk and said, "You seem lighter." Clara laughed and said, "I feel lighter." It was true. She walked with her shoulders down and her breath low. She noticed the way people responded to that. Faces softened, small jokes found their way to her. Invitations came without her chasing them. She didn't call it luck. She called it alignment. At home, she still lived her simple life. She washed a cup and let it clink softly on the rack. She answered a few messages and didn't overthink each word. When a friend suggested a Saturday stroll before the garden sign-up, Clara said yes and left the plan at that. No overplanning, no bracing. In the evenings, she sometimes added a second 2-minute practice. Hand on heart, eyes closed. She saw herself stepping into a room and feeling welcome. She let the feeling fill the edges of her chest, then ended before her mind could ask for proof. The proof showed up on its own in small ways: a saved seat, a shared umbrella, a new name learned and remembered. She went to sleep with the sense that her life was making space. Nothing dramatic had happened. Still, the days had a new texture, softer, kinder, open at the edges. She didn't argue with it. She let it be true and trusted the next small door to appear when it was time. Clara noticed how small things could brighten a whole day when she let them. At book club, someone passed around a recipe for lemon soup. "It's easy," the woman said, "and warm." Clara took the paper and felt a lift in her chest. She used to shrug at handouts like that. This time she folded it neatly and slid it into her bag like a small promise. On the walk home, she practiced her 2 minutes in a quiet way. Hand on heart for one breath, remembering the feeling of being cared for. The warmth came faster now, like a light she could turn on without force. She smiled at nothing and kept moving. The next afternoon, she stopped by the market and bought 2 lemons and a small bundle of parsley. The cashier pointed to the lemons and said, "Good choice." It was a tiny comment, but it landed. At home, she made the soup and ate it at the table, steam rising in small curls. She texted the woman from book club a thank you and added, "It made my day." The answer came back with a heart and a note about adding rice. Clara felt the touch of a simple thread between them and let it stay. Later that week, a neighbor knocked with a flower clipping in a jar. "This grows fast," he said. "Plant it, and it will keep you company." Clara laughed and set the jar by the window. In the past, she would have said, "Oh, you shouldn't have," and tried to give it back. Now she said, "I love it, thank you." She touched the leaves and felt the tiny bump of new growth. Every time she passed the window, she looked at the jar and felt a quiet yes inside. After a meeting at the community hall, light rain began. Clara hesitated at the door, holding her bag under her coat. A woman from the group called, "I'm headed your way. Want a ride?" The old answer, that fast no, rose and then faded. "Yes, thanks," Clara said. In the car, they talked about nothing heavy. Street names. A memory about a teacher who always wore bright ties. When they reached Clara's building, Clara felt a wish to say more. She let herself. "I'm grateful," she said simply. The woman smiled and said, "Me too. See you Saturday." The days kept offering small gifts: a seat saved at the lecture, a laugh shared in the bread aisle, a text from a friend with a picture of their dog in a sweater that was too big. Clara didn't chase these moments. She let them arrive, and then she let them soak in. She could feel the difference in her body. Her shoulders stayed down longer. Her chest stayed open even when the apartment was quiet again. The empty chair felt less like a wound and more like a place being kept for someone kind. At night, she wrote 3 lines in her notebook, not about goals, but about thanks. "Thank you for the soup. Thank you for the plant. Thank you for the ride." The words were plain and enough. She didn't push for more proof. She looked at the small things and decided they counted because they did. Before sleep, she closed her eyes and let the feeling of love beside her rise the way it had been rising lately, soft, steady, near. She breathed into it for 2 minutes and ended while it was still warm. Gratitude didn't feel like a trick anymore. It felt like the way her day learned to hold her, and the way she was learning to hold her day. For a little while, life felt easy. Clara cooked the lemon soup again and shared a bowl with a neighbor in the hallway. The plant by the window pushed out a tiny new leaf. She walked to the market with a light step, and felt the warm, steady thing in her chest come without effort. Then, on a quiet morning, a sharp sentence slid in. "This won't last." It sounded reasonable, like a warning meant to help. Her shoulders rose. She checked her calendar, and suddenly every plan felt risky. What if the good week had only been luck? What if people were being kind out of pity? What if she was opening too much and would look foolish when it faded? She picked up her phone to confirm Saturday's stroll before the garden sign-up. Her thumb hovered over send. She thought of how nice the last talk had felt, how simple the laughter had been. Then the doubt voice said, "Don't get used to it. Better to cancel now than feel silly later." She typed a quick note. Something came up, "I'll skip today," and pressed send before she could change her mind. The answer came back right away. "No problem. See you another time." It was kind. It still stung. The warm feeling in her chest thinned. She told herself to be practical. She made a new list. Clean the closet, sort papers, return calls, things that could fill the day without asking her heart to be open. She worked through the list and felt nothing. The plant looked the same, but she stopped looking. At book club, she had planned to sit in the middle again. She chose the end seat near the door. When the host asked what she thought, she said, "It was good," and tucked her hands in her lap. A woman offered a ride in the rain. Clara almost said yes. The old shield came up and she said, "I'm fine," even though she wasn't. She waited under the awning and watched the taillights fade. The walk home was short. It felt long. That night she sat on the bed with her hand over her heart and tried to bring up the easy picture, 2 cups on a table, a quiet walk beside someone. The scene flickered like a weak light. Her mind added a line she didn't invite. "Don't pretend." She opened her eyes fast and told herself she would try tomorrow. She closed the notebook and set it aside. The room felt smaller at once. The next morning she reached for her phone first. She scrolled for a while and learned nothing new. A message from a friend sat unread because she didn't trust herself to answer lightly. She told herself she was being careful. She was closing the door a little to keep from being hurt. The carefulness felt like tightness in her jaw and a small ache under her ribs. In the afternoon, her neighbor knocked to ask about the plant. Clara answered with the door half open. "It's fine," she said, and kept the talk short. When the door shut, she leaned against it and knew what she had done. She had pulled back before anything went wrong, the way she always did when the good felt too bright. She made tea and sat at the table with both hands around the cup. The old sentence echoed, "This won't last." She didn't fight it. She just listened and felt how cold it made her. The cup warmed her fingers, but not her chest. She went to bed early and turned off the lamp without her evening practice. The apartment was quiet. Inside, she was quieter still, as if she had folded herself up to take less space. The message came on a Friday night. It was from a man she had traded a few light texts with after book club moved online for a week. He wrote, "I'd like to see you sometime." Then, a minute later, "Maybe after things calm down. I'm busy for a while." The 2 lines sat one above the other like a yes and a no. Clara read them twice and couldn't tell which one was true. Her chest tightened the way it did when a door looked open and closed at the same time. She typed back, "No worries. Hope your week goes well," and set the phone face down. Her throat felt dry. It wasn't heartbreak. It was something smaller and sharper. The feeling of reaching out and touching air. Saturday she meant to do her practice first thing. The notebook lay on the nightstand with the corner turned up. She made tea and told herself she would sit in a minute. Then she washed the cup and answered 2 emails. She folded towels that didn't need folding. When she passed the nightstand again, the notebook felt heavier for being so light. She left it there. A neighbor knocked to see how the plant was doing. Clara opened the door halfway and kept her smile quick. "It's fine," she said, and closed the door with care so it wouldn't look like a flinch. After the lock clicked, the apartment felt too quiet. She turned on the radio and turned it off. She thought about the mixed message and replayed it until the words were dull. Sunday stretched wide. She woke early and checked her phone for no reason. No new notes. She set the phone down, picked it up again, and scrolled through strangers. Everyone blurred into hobbies and heights. She closed the app, then opened it again as if it might have changed in the last 10 minutes. The loop made her tired. By noon, she had done all her chores. The counters were clean. The floor was swept. Her hands were busy, but her mind ran ahead, making lists of what could go wrong next. Maybe she had been too hopeful. Maybe the warm days had been a trick. The thought sounded practical and left her stomach tight. She tried to visualize. Eyes closed, hand on heart. The image would not hold. Instead of a steady presence beside her, she felt a thin draft of doubt. She knew what to do. Breathe, keep it simple, stop before it soured. But she couldn't bring herself to start in the first place. The practice gathered dust inside a day that had too much space. Afternoon slid into evening. The light changed and made the room look like a waiting room. Clara heated soup and ate it standing up. She wanted to call someone and also wanted to say nothing at all. She chose silence and felt both safe and lonely at once. Before bed, she pulled the notebook into her lap. She stared at the blank line where her sentence should go and felt heat rise behind her eyes. She wasn't angry at anyone. She was tired of trying and then not trying and not knowing which one hurt more. She set the notebook back down. In the dark, she lay on her side and listened to her breath come short. Worry grew loud, not like a storm, but like a drip that wouldn't stop. She whispered, "I'm okay," without believing it, and wished for morning not because she was excited, but because mornings ended nights like this. The plant by the window was quiet. The phone stayed still. She closed her eyes and let the ache be real, hoping that would be enough for tonight. Clara went to a free talk at the community hall because she did not want to sit with her thoughts. The room was simple and bright. A counselor stood at the front and spoke in a steady voice about stress and habits. "We all have loops," she said. "A loop is a path you know so well that you walk it without meaning to. When you notice you're on it, pause, reset, continue." Clara felt the words touch something inside her. The counselor drew a small arrow on a board. "Progress," she said. Then another arrow. "Fear," then the line flattened. "Stall." The pattern looked like a shape Clara had seen in her own days. Good week. Doubt. Pull back. She did not need a big story to explain it. She could feel it. "Pause," the counselor repeated. "That means stop the spin, put a hand on your chest, breathe 3 times. Reset is not a race. Reset means pick a kinder state. Continue means take one small step from that state." The room was quiet. Clara's eyes stung a little, the good kind. She took one quiet breath right there in her chair and felt her shoulders drop half an inch. After the talk, people lined up to ask questions. Clara didn't have one. She stayed in her seat and thought of the last few weeks. She saw the small wins, the laughter in the market, the saved seat, the ride in the rain she had turned down, the message that said yes and no at once. She saw how each time the good arrived, she lifted her guard and waited for the hit. The waiting hurt more than the hit ever could. Progress, fear, stall. The arrows fit. She walked home slowly. At the corner, she almost took out her phone to scroll, then heard the word pause as if someone had said it next to her. She put the phone back and placed her hand over her heart for one breath. The street was the same. Her chest felt softer. Reset, she thought. What state do I choose? Calm. Open a little. She let the feeling return, not big, just enough. Continue. One step. She looked up and smiled at the neighbor from the bakery when he waved. He waved back. That was all. In the apartment, she didn't rush to fix the whole loop. She set a chair by the window where the plant lived and sat. Hand on heart. 3 slow breaths. Pause. She named the fear without arguing with it. It's okay to want and not have right now. Reset. She brought up the small warm scene she trusted, the sound of 2 cups on a table, the sense of a kind presence beside her. She felt it for 1 minute. Continue. She sent one simple text to the friend she had canceled on. Would you like to walk this week? No apology essay, no long defense, just a door. She wrote a new line in the notebook, under the old ones. When I notice the loop, I pause, reset, continue. The sentence felt like a handle she could hold when the floor moved. She didn't declare she was changed. She only promised herself she would use the handle the next time the arrows tried to pull her back into the old path. Before bed, she stood in the quiet room and tried the steps once more. Pause, reset, continue. The loop was still there. She could feel its pull, but now she had a way to step off it, and that felt like a beginning she could trust. Clara sat by the window with the small plant and her notebook. The words from the counselor kept circling in a kind way. Pause, reset, continue. She wrote them once more, then looked at the space beneath. If there was a loop, there was also a reason she kept stepping back onto it. She waited and let the answer come without pushing. It came as a simple sentence that felt old. I'm not worthy of lasting love. The line wasn't loud. It didn't shout or accuse. It sat there like a rule she had followed for years without knowing she had agreed to it. She read it twice and felt a deep tiredness move through her. She remembered small moments that fit, pulling back before the laugh reached her, saying no to a ride, canceling a plan that felt too good to be safe. If you believe you are not worthy, you do not let good things stay. You show them out before they can leave you. She didn't argue with the sentence. She had tried to debate herself for years, and it never helped. Instead, she named it and asked a new question. What would I do each day if I believed I was worthy now? She put her hand over her heart and breathed 3 slow breaths. Reset. She said a short line out loud, testing the feel of it. I am worthy of kind, mutual love. The words warmed her palm. She said it again, softer, and waited for the small shift in her chest. It came like a sigh she had been holding. Clara made a plan that was simple enough to keep. Each morning she would add 2 minutes to feel the worthy state first, not to push it, to let it land. Then she would take one gentle step that matched it. She wrote examples so she couldn't hide later. Accept a ride, sit in the middle, send a light message, keep the plan, allow help. None of these required proof from the world before she offered trust. They were ways to act from worthiness, not toward it. She tried the 2 minutes right then, eyes closed, hand on heart. She pictured herself at her own table, not trying to be good or clever. Just there, worthy because she was there. A kind presence sat across from her. She didn't have to perform to keep them. The feeling settled low and steady. When doubt tried to tap, she said the new line quietly. I am worthy of kind, mutual love. The tap softened. When the timer on the stove beeped for no reason, she had set it to remind herself to stand, she opened her eyes and stopped on purpose. Continue. One step. She picked up her phone and sent a short note to the friend she had canceled on. I'd love to reschedule that walk. Are you free Wednesday afternoon? Then she put the phone down and let her shoulders stay where they were. Later, washing a cup, she noticed a habit rise. To move fast, to be useful, to earn air, and she slowed her hands on purpose. Worthy meant she could move at a human pace even when no one was watching. Worthy meant she could receive a kind word without paying it back right away. Worthy meant she could keep a good moment in her body after it ended. She wrote one more line in the notebook so she would see it every day. Worthiness is a state I practice, not a prize I earn. She closed the cover and felt a small, stable yes inside. The loop still existed. She could feel its pull. But now she had both a handle and a truth. When she paused, she would not only reset to calm, she would reset to worthy. From there, her next steps could be simple and real. Clara woke before her alarm and sat up with the quiet. She placed her hand over her heart and spoke the new line softly so it could land. I am worthy of kind, mutual love. 3 slow breaths. She closed her eyes and felt what that meant now, not someday. Steady care given and received, laughter that stayed, silence that felt safe. She pictured herself at her own table with someone across from her who met her eyes and didn't make her smaller. The warmth rose low and even. She kept it for 2 minutes and ended while it was still sweet. She took one simple step from that state. She pulled the extra pillow from the closet and set it beside her own. It looked ordinary and brave at once. She smoothed the case and let the sight change the room a little. Worthy meant she could make space without apologizing for it. In the kitchen, she put 2 mugs on the hook by the stove. She had owned them for years, but only one ever hung there. She washed both and set them to dry, imagining the soft clink of 2 cups on the table, not as a test, as a welcome. After breakfast, she opened the dresser and cleared a drawer. She folded 2 sweaters and moved them to a shelf. She wiped the drawer and lined the bottom with paper that smelled faintly of lemon. The empty space looked like a promise kept to herself. She didn't rush to fill it with someone's name. She let it be ready. That afternoon, she dragged the second chair from the corner and placed it at the table. The table felt balanced, less like a desk, more like a place to share. She set 2 plain napkins in the center and smiled at how small cloth could make a room feel kinder. She caught the old urge to explain herself to no one, it's just for guests, and let it pass. Worthy meant she didn't have to justify the life she was preparing to live. She walked through the apartment in slow circles, making tiny adjustments that matched her morning feeling. A spare toothbrush in the cabinet, an empty hook by the door, a second coaster on the end table. She didn't overdo it or stage a scene. She changed enough to tell her body the truth. Love is welcome here. In the evening, she sat at the table with 2 cups of tea. One stayed full, a placeholder for what she was calling in. She held her own cup and breathed. When the old thought tried to say this was silly, she touched her chest and said, "Pause, reset. I am worthy of kind, mutual love. Continue." She texted a friend to confirm Wednesday's walk and added a small note. Looking forward to it. She meant it. Before bed, she wrote 3 lines in the notebook. I felt worthiness for 2 minutes. I made space for 2. I took one clear step. She set the notebook down and turned to see the 2 pillows resting side by side. The sight made her chest loosen and her jaw soften. It was a simple room, but it no longer told the story of being alone forever. It told the story of someone ready, open, and steady. Clara turned off the light with a quiet smile and slept deeply, as if the space she made in her home had made space in her body too. Clara woke with her new line steady in her chest and did the 2 minutes before her feet touched the floor. I am worthy of kind, mutual love. The warmth rose and settled. When she opened her eyes, a small nudge came with it. Go to the garden on boarding today. She had signed up weeks ago and almost forgotten. The feeling said, go. She trusted it. At the community hall, name labels and pens waited on a long table. A volunteer pushed a stack toward her. Write your name and group, tools, beds, or welcome team. Clara picked welcome team, the one that matched her calm. She wrote Clara in neat letters and stuck the label on her sweater. In the shuffle, another volunteer passed labels down the row. A second sticker ended up in Clara's hand. She laughed and handed it to the man beside her. Looks like this one's yours. He smiled, surprised. I'm Daniel, he said, and then looked down. The spare label already had a name written, Clara. They both laughed again. Well, he said, I suppose I'm you for now. He was a quiet sort, with a steady way of standing and eyes that stayed when they met hers. On the sign-up sheet, someone had paired Clara plus Daniel for the welcome table, likely because of the mix-up. They took their spots by the door with a map, a pen, and a box of seeds to hand out. People flowed in, damp from a light rain. Daniel greeted each person like it mattered, not rushing the hello. When he didn't hear a name, he asked once more with care, and then used it the next time. Clara noticed the ease in her own voice around him. It wasn't bright or forced. It was simple. Between arrivals, he told her he was widowed, that he'd moved back to the neighborhood to be closer to his sister, that he liked fixing small things and growing herbs in containers. He didn't expand the sad parts into the whole story. He didn't hide them either. He asked about her lemon soup when she mentioned a recipe and listened as if the soup itself had a history worth hearing. She felt her shoulders stay down without effort. A man arrived balancing a tray of seedlings. Daniel stepped forward to hold the door, then looked back to make sure Clara was still there before he turned. The gesture was small and full. When the rush slowed, he leaned toward the box of seeds and read a packet out loud. Marigolds, good for borders and keeping pests away. He glanced at her and smiled. Guards that look like sunshine. Clara laughed and felt the laugh reach low. The good way. She wanted to fill the space with more words. The old habit, and didn't. Silence with him felt like part of the talk. At the end, they stacked chairs and returned the markers. The volunteer in charge thanked them for holding the door all morning. Daniel took the spare label from his pocket and handed it to her. I think this belongs to you. She took it, and before the moment could slide past, said, Would you like to trade numbers in case they need us again? He nodded, as if the idea were natural. They exchanged phones and typed, careful and unhurried. Outside, the rain had stopped. They walked to the corner together without planning it. He said, I'm going to make that soup you mentioned. She said, Tell me how it turns out. At the crosswalk, they paused. He didn't rush the goodbye. I'm glad the labels got confused, he said. Me too, she answered and felt the truth of it in her chest. A warm, steady light she could trust. She touched her heart after they parted, not to keep him there, but to keep herself open. The door had shown itself. She had stepped through. They began with short walks after the garden hours. Daniel kept a steady pace and did not rush his words. He asked about her week and waited for the answer. When she asked about his, he told her enough to be real, and stopped before the story turned heavy. They learned they both liked simple soups and old movies that ended with quiet instead of noise. When it was time to part, he said the next time out loud and kept it. He called when he said he would call. Not every hour, not to fill space, but to meet her with a warm hello at the time they agreed. She learned the tone of his voice when he was smiling. He learned the way she hummed when she was at the stove. Some evenings they ate together at her table, 2 mugs, 2 napkins. She served lemon soup and he brought bread and a small jar of jam from his sister. He asked, Do you want help with the dishes? And did not move until she said yes. When she said yes, he washed and let her dry. The sink felt like a shared task, not a test. On a Saturday, he fixed the sticky latch on her window. He told her what he was doing before he did it and showed her the little screw he had replaced. Only if you want me to, he said first. She felt what clear boundaries were like in a body. Her shoulders stayed down, her breath stayed low, and the yes came easy. The window slid smooth again. The room felt new. They both had their own plans and kept them. When she needed a quiet day, she said, I'm taking Sunday to rest. And he replied, Good, call me after your nap. When he needed to help his sister, he said so. There was no guessing game, no fear that a boundary would break the bond. The bond held because of the boundaries, not in spite of them. In small ways, he showed care without being asked. He remembered her book club day and texted, Hope it's a good chapter. He noticed she liked to sit near the middle and saved her a spot when he arrived first. When the rain came, he brought an umbrella big enough for 2 and did not pull her under it like a hero. He held it so they both could walk and see. Clara felt something she had almost stopped hoping to feel. She felt seen. When she spoke, he looked at her face, not over her shoulder. When she fell quiet, he let the quiet be part of them. She didn't have to earn air. The old itch to perform softened and then faded. The space she made in her home, a second pillow, an open drawer, matched the space she felt inside her chest. Sometimes the loop tugged. Doubt tried its small tricks. She used her tool. Pause, reset, continue. She put a hand on her heart, breathed, and returned to the truth she knew now. I am worthy of kind, mutual love. From that state, the next clear step was often simple. Say what she meant, ask for what she wanted, receive what was offered. One evening they walked back from the garden as the streetlights came on. He reached for her hand, slow enough for her to meet him. Their hands fit in a plain, perfect way. She didn't think about how long it would last. She felt it now. The chair at her table was no longer a wound. It was a seat someone kind filled. What once seemed impossible was happening in quiet scenes she could hold. Clara looked at him and felt the sentence settle all the way through. She was worthy, and this love matched her. Clara kept small rituals that showed her body the truth of her life. 2 pillows stayed on the bed, 2 mugs hung by the stove. The empty drawer remained open for 1 beat each morning, a soft reminder of the space she had made and kept. She didn't count days or test the bond. She thanked the day out loud in the kitchen, a quiet thank you for steady care given and received. Gratitude felt like a warm light she could switch on without forcing. When the garden season turned, she asked the coordinator if the hall could host a small evening circle for anyone curious about inviting love back into their lives. Nothing fancy, she said, just what helped me. A few neighbors came, then a few more. Daniel set up chairs and left them to talk, bringing a plate of sliced oranges and water. He squeezed her hand on the way out and said, "You've got this," which made her smile in a way that settled low. Clara began each circle with a simple breath. "Choose your method," she said. "There's no single best door." I started with scripting, 1 line in present tense. Later, visualization fit better. Both worked when I received the feeling first. She guided them through 2 slow minutes, hand on heart, eyes softened, practicing the warm presence of kind, mutual love. People looked less guarded when they opened their eyes. She told the truth about the loop. I'd make progress, then fear would rise and I'd stall. The handle I use is pause, reset, continue. Pause means stop the spin. Hand over your heart, 3 breaths. Reset means pick a kinder state. Calm, open, worthy. Continue means take 1 simple step from that state. When someone asked what made the biggest difference, she didn't hesitate. Releasing not worthy. I didn't argue with it. I named it and practiced a different sentence. I am worthy of kind, mutual love. Worthiness isn't a prize we earn. It's a state we practice. She watched shoulders drop around the room as if the words loosened something that had been tight for years. She shared the practical pieces that had anchored the change. Prepare your life for 2, she said, smiling at the memory. 2 pillows, 2 mugs, a cleared drawer, an extra chair, space at the table. Not as a performance, just to tell your body the truth about what is welcome. Then take the next clear step. Say yes to a ride. Sit in the middle, send a simple message. Keep a plan you made from a calm place. People told small stories at the end. A saved seat, a neighbor's text, a walk that felt easy. Clara asked them to let those count. Tiny wins are not previews, they are the beginning, she said. Let warmth land. After each circle, she and Daniel put the chairs away side by side. Walking home, she felt the same quiet she used to wish for, but it no longer felt like a wall. It felt like home. She kept gratitude and space for 2, not out of fear of losing them, but because they matched her life now. When new neighbors asked how to start, she shared the door without fuss. Choose your method, feel it first. Release not worthy. Prepare your life, take the next step, and when the door opens, walk through it with a soft heart. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to support us. Also, let us know what are you manifesting in your life.